Hey, what's up, everybody? Mogian Monster here, and welcome to Why the Fascination, or WTF as I like to call it. Welcome to Tuesday night. Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to see everybody. We got a lot of people in chat already. That's awesome. We got a really good show to plan tonight. The Sisters of the Moon are going to be joining me here in a minute. I got to admit, guys, you know how I'm always doing stupid stuff, pressing the wrong button and whatnot. Yesterday when I posted that video, uh, I didn't realize I posted the wrong video. It's the right video, but I had put up a video where it was all, text. If you see me go like this, it's supposed to be there. I filled it all in, but I put the wrong video up. So there was no text. I didn't realize it till last night, but there was like 90 comments. So I was like, man, sorry guys, I'm leaving it. I just had to be honest with you guys because it's just funny because that's typical me. Also, last night when I said thank you to all my mods. I did forget somebody, and if I put the right video up, you would have seen Michael, Long Island Bigfoot. Thank you so much for all you've done too. I didn't, I did forget you, but then I put it in the video and I screwed up. But Mike, thanks a lot for everything, man. Real quick shout out to everybody in chat. Sandra Piper, Patrick, Bama, what's up, man? Mopar Bill, Cashew, hi, hon. Thank you for everything you're doing. Mike Stockton, what's happening? Hey, Squatch Lady Paw, good to see you. Who else? Scotty B, what's going on? Linda Bennett. Lane Goodspeed. Cat. Patrick Noble. If I repeat you, I apologize. TFE, what's happening? Mr. Townsend, great to see you here, man. That'd be Jeff Townsend. That's awesome to see you. Big Rob, hey, thanks, man, for modding. Can Squatch, how's it going? Well, guys, if I probably missed Blue Eyed Northern. Hey, Mike is here. What's up, dude? Hilton, good to see you. Sound like I'm in a hurry, but there's a good show waiting to happen. So if I missed anybody, I see Chick Feeds in here, Bobby Ounce, Ida Bustamante, and guys, thank you so much for all the amazing comments. And the congratulations for hitting 1,000 subs. You guys are amazing. Thank you again. But without further ado, I really want to bring these ladies up and let's get this show rolling. They have some amazing stories to tell, and I really admire what these ladies do. So one at a time, I'm going to bring them up, introduce them, and we'll get the show on the road. So first up, I want to bring up Sandy Harris. Sandy, hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Welcome to Why the Fascination. I'm so glad that you ladies could make it.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm located all the way in South Georgia, right by the coast right now. So that's where I'm staying at the moment.
Right on.
Yeah.
Barbara Locke, pleasure to meet you.
Hi.
And welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm honored to have you guys on.
Oh, nice.
Where are you coming from again?
I'm in Northeast Texas. I'm about 15 miles from the Red River.
Okay. And last but not least, Debbie Jones.
Hi, y'all.
How are you, Debbie? Welcome.
I'm
Thank
good.
you guys so much for coming on. I'm not sure where to start with you guys. There's so many stories to tell. Where do you want to start? Like the beginning or just, tell us how you each got involved in this?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? With Sandy?
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. I was infatuated with the subject of Bigfoot, like a lot of people are, when that movie The Legend of Body Creek came out many moons ago. Oh, it was just yesterday. I'm so young still, but anyways, as a little girl, I remember looking on a United States map, and I knew that monster was located in Arkansas, and I was thinking, there's no way he's ever going to travel this far just to come get me, so I'm good, right? Boy, did I learn a lot later on, but that's my infatuation and how I got interested in, even as a child. And until I started having some activity at my home in South Georgia. And then I realized, oh my goodness, there must be more than one out there, but, that's how I got started in it. And I know we've got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to pass the torch to someone else and let them say how they got infatuated with it.
All right. Well, Barbara.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm old enough to remember when the Patty film came out, and that was really interesting to me. And then as a teenager, I went to see the Legend of Boggy Creek, the go-to movie. And I really, it just stayed in my mind for a long time. And over the years, I knew there was something out there. And then Sandy and I both started getting interested together because she started hearing strange things around her house. And so I've been interested in it for a long, long time. But in 2005, when I moved into my house, I started having activity around my house. So then I had to get involved with it and start learning what was going on. And of course, I knew Sandy. Sandy's my baby sister. And I met Debbie, and we formed a all-female group, and we go out there, and we've had some fantastic stuff happen to us, and we've just been very fortunate.
And a lot of your stuff happened right from the get-go. Like, people go years and don't experience squat.
Right. But, we've been really fortunate and had friends give us tips on where to go. And when we go try it out, boom. We've got something to talk about. We're excited.
Squatch like the ladies, I guess.
That's what we think.
We think so. We think we're interested to them.
That's awesome.
It draws them in.
How about you, Debbie?
Well, I grew up in East Texas in a little town called Malta, and we're about 45 minutes from Falk, Arkansas. And so we didn't know that the Falk monster was a Bigfoot back then. We hadn't heard about Patty. We had 3 channels. And it took a while for the news of Patty to get to us. And I remember going to see the movie, actually, with my mama and my cousins. And, it said based on true events. And when we kind of started getting worried because, Falk, Arkansas was just right there. And I had cousins that I played with in Falk, Arkansas. And so when I said something to Mama about it, saying it was true, she was like, "Oh no, hun, they just say that to make it more exciting." but it was true, and we had stuff, that we experienced at our house, like a couple of things that I can remember specifically. But still, back then we didn't know what it was, But later on, when we started hearing about what Bigfoot was and the sounds that they made, and we put 2 and 2 together. And so I've always, as long as I can remember, been fascinated with the subject, just didn't know what the subject actually was at the time. And so when I met all these girls and we started going out together, like you said, pretty much from our first real little expedition, I guess you could call it, we got really lucky. And I mean, that's all this is to us. It's been luck, and we think it's because we're female.
Yeah, I definitely think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and it's just females that are out there too. I think they're probably, they know, that guys typically are the hunters, in the woods, and they've seen what hunters can do. And not only are they interested in females, probably, but they're not intimidated. I don't think by us.
And I was going to say that it's the intimidation factor. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we smell good.
Yeah. We spray perfume.
And we bring pretty sparkling lights.
Yeah, man, we make it fascinating for them. They come out and look at us. Come on.
We sing to them, all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome. Just checking. I see when I'm very interactive with chat on my show, so I just gotta make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope, we're good.
Well, hey, everybody in chat.
Yeah, hey, thanks for being here.
Mike Stockton, Super Sleuth, what's up? Paulie T, good to see you. Wit, a lot of new faces, new names. Wow, 87 watching already. Awesome.
Cool.
So yeah, where were we? So, how about some of your stories that have the things you've gone through? I mean, I think the whole bone field, the 3 acres of bones, is crazy.
That was.
I don't know how many people have heard your stories, so it's up to you where you want to start, where you want to go from here.
Well,
Well-
Debbie, tell them about the killing fields a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to make it shorter than I normally do because I do talk a lot. But I mean, it's just so exciting and there's so much. That was really our first, we had met previously and we had made this plan to go to this area. We were supposed to meet some other people there, and then that fell through. And we, when we were notified that that wasn't going to be the plan, the girls and I, we decided, well, we're still going to go. And so we get out there and we're looking for a place to set up camp. There was Patty was with us, Patty Ogden was with us, and we were pulling into different areas because we had never been to this location before. And it's in southeast Oklahoma. And as we're driving and turning around, trying to find a place, I'm in the back and I'm looking behind us out the back window to make sure we don't run over anything as we're backing up. And I see these bones, and it was like a rib cage, but then there were just tons of bones scattered around. And I said, y'all, I said, hold on a second. I said, is that a rib cage back there? And Patty, another girl, get out, and sure enough, it was a rib cage. It was deer, and but there was a lot of bones everywhere. So we're walking all around looking at all that, and we kind of follow a trail, if you want to call it that, and we go back into this, it ends up into this big open area that we didn't really know was back there. Of course, it was all wooded, and that's where we started seeing just massive amounts of bones. And because at first we just thought maybe it was poachers, the bones that we had seen up front. But when we walked on back to the back and we saw it was at least 3 acres. I mean, it could have been more. I'm not a land surveyor, so I don't know how much was there. But it was out by a lake, a river actually, that flowed into a big lake there in Oklahoma. And we couldn't take 3 or 4 steps without seeing another bone. And what made it so interesting, Mose, is that there would be, the skeletal remains of the head with the antlers still attached. So that's kind of one of the things that helped us make the determination that it wasn't poachers, because they're going to take the antlers.
Absolutely.
And these were nice antlers. But then there were several that had the heads, antlers. Some, of course, didn't have antlers, but the spinal column was still attached and the hip bones. And then what was really interesting to us is that the leg bones, we actually found some that were broken in 2. And I have one right behind me. I'll get it in a second. I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's laying right up there on top of that box that I brought home with me. And it's that's from what we named it, the killing field. And so when you hear us talk about the killing field, that's what we're talking about. But we camped there. That we went on down just a little ways from the killing field. It was like an inlet, came up on each side of it, and then that field was up on a hill. And so we camped over on the other side of the inlet that night. Patty had some great big chimes. I mean, real big ones, they were real big. The tubes were probably that big around. And we hung them on the other side of the fire. We had a fire, pit dug. And there were 2 tents done in an L shape. Henry had gotten there later that night. And so we're in our tent. It was freezing. It was the end of January. It was about 13 degrees outside,
Wow.
according, to what and it was cold. And later that night, Carrie had moved her car around. I mean, not her car, but her truck around to the back of the tent, and it was in an angle. And the fire was shining in front of us, and it caught it back on her silver, her big chrome bumper and everything. And so it was creating, light back there behind our tents. And we started hearing stuff. That first night, though, Patty had heard in the middle of the night. I slept, like a log through it. Patty had heard what she said sounded like, she in her head, she was like, it sounded like a female Sasquatch on the other side of the river, just calling for, come back to me. She said it was this long, melancholy howl, and that she heard it twice. And I didn't hear it at all. And then she also had previously said that she heard heavy breathing up by our tent. And it was over on my side of the tent, she said. And she was in a mummy sleeping bag. All she had was her head. She had that little thing pulled tight. And she said that there was no way she could get her hand out to reach over to try to wake me up, which I'm kind of glad she didn't. But she said that she could hear this heavy breathing on my side of the tent. And that happened to be where the cooler was. And so she just got this feeling that something was standing there at that cooler. So that next day when she was telling us all of this, that's when Carrie had decided that she'd pull her truck around to the back of the tent, back there. And it had chili that day. And we normally don't leave our trash out because there are bear there in Oklahoma. And but one bowl had been left out that had some beans in it. And during the night, we started hearing movement. And the light reflecting on Carrie's bumper was reflecting on the back of our tent, and we began seeing shadows. Henry had her parabolic out. She was sleeping in her truck, and she had her parabolic out on top of her tent. Her truck, and she had her headphones on, and she usually, wore them a lot while she was laying there awake. And she started hearing movement. She later, when playing it back, she could hear what sounded like a monotone whistle. And then she said that every now and then, when one of us would roll over or something, she'd hear like a, and that's the best I can do it. And then the sound would stop. And then as soon as it got quiet again, she could hear more movement. And of course, we were, asleep at that time. But then we started, we woke up and we started hearing the movement. So after I heard the movement and Patty was awake, I would motion to Patty and try to point, that there was something in this back corner. Well, then we could start hearing it kind of in front of us too. And we had our Mr. Buddy going, so that put a light in our tent. And I figured, if we can see the movement from them outside, then they can see the movement from us inside. So I was trying to be really still, and I set up on the side of my, my bed. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm pointing to the back of the tent, telling her there's movement here, because she's laying on her side. She's still in her mummy, thing. She has no hand movements. She'd be like a little, Tyrannosaurus. She could get out of there. But I'm doing like that, pointing to the back, and she would kind of nod. And then when you hear something out front, I do like that. So finally, there got to be so much movement in front of us that I decided I was going to try to stand up and look out the tent and see. We had left the flaps on top of our doors. We had the 2 zipper doors. And so we had left the flaps down just a little bit because, we didn't want all that cold air coming in, but we always try to leave an opening so we can see out.
Sure.
And so I got to admit, I was pretty scared and I was trying to stand up. And I just remember while I was trying to stand up and position myself slowly, because I didn't want to make a lot of movement, I was praying that my knees weren't going to pop and snap. I didn't want them to hear it and think, okay, y'all be quiet. There's somebody moving in that tent. So I was praying constantly, please don't let my knees pop. And please don't let me freak out,
Sure.
And I didn't know what I was going to see, if something was going to be standing out there. We had this, one of those portable canopies, that you can take to football games, baseball games and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's just
We
shade.
had that, yeah, we had one of those right out in front of our tents. And so I wasn't sure how much I was going to be able to see. But I do remember when I looked out of those flaps, I could look over to the left a little bit and see Carrie's tent right there. And, we had the covers on, and I remember there wasn't a bit of wind. Thank goodness, because we'd have froze our butts off if there had been. It was cold enough as it was. And then I looked over kind of to the right, and I could see just part of Henry's vehicle over there. And then out in front, I could see the fire, and there was still a little fire going. And there was this great big tree. I think it was a pine tree. I'm not really sure. I can't remember, but it was next to the fire, kind of on the other side of it, but to the right a little bit. And that was the side that those big chimes were hanging down. And then we had all of our wood laid out to the left of that. During the night, we had hung 14 glow necklaces up on the tree line way back on the other side of those that tree and everything. And of course, it was just pitch black. I couldn't see past that tree that had the chimes on it. And but I remember seeing those chimes hanging there because the fire was lighting them up and kind of, bouncing off of them. And so for, what seemed like an eternity, I didn't see anything. But then all of a sudden, something sounded like it hit those chimes. And what was so weird about this is, everybody out there knows that the chimes hang down and there's that great big ball that hangs down. And usually when the wind blows, that ball moves and makes the chimes move around. Well, when those chimes got hit, normally they'd go up because we've tried to recreate it. We've hit them and everything, and the chimes will all splay apart and fall around that ball. But it really looked, when it got hit, it looked like something had held all those chimes together almost. And if they were hanging like this, they went straight up really fast where they were just parallel with the ground and then back down. And they were hit with so much force that when they went back down, they should have swung backwards, past that tree, but they didn't. And you could hear something like it almost hit something and it stopped them. But I couldn't see anything there. It was just solid black. And then they went up again and back down. And you could hear kind of like a bump, bump, bump. And it did it 5 times in a row. And then it stopped for just a second. And then it'd do it 5 more times and stop. And then do it 5 more times and then stop. And I remember Patty was laying there and, she couldn't reach out and grab me or anything. And I know my eyes had to just been as big as silver dollars. And I looked at her and I got my hands like this and I'm trying to do it in front of me so nothing can see me moving. And I'm going like that, trying to tell her that those chimes, that's how they're moving. And she's going, trying to, whisper stuff to me and I can't hear her. And I have no explanation for that. And I still, all sorts of things have ran through my mind. Back then, I never believed in the woo. I would say, oh, that's BS. But I can't explain that. I couldn't see anything holding those chimes in place when they were going up and then stopping and going up and stopping. So I realized after that I had to kind of open my mind to broader ideas. That next day, though, of course, as soon as we all, got up, because we weren't coming out of that tent that night. We were, still relatively new to all of this. We were like, we're not going out there. But as soon as we got up that next morning, we're out there trying to recreate it. We found the bowl that one of us had left out there, something had just licked it. There was a line going down that bowl. And then we saw that Patty, I think, is the one that found that the beans were right under the chimes, just kind of like something to spit the beans out. Like they didn't like those beans. And then we looked around for prints. We found a couple that we thought were possible prints, when we tried to cast those. And then what was really interesting is that those 14 glow necklaces that we'd put out there in the trees, 5 of them were completely gone. And I'm the tallest, and so I usually try to hang them, since I can reach higher. Me or Barbara won because we're both really close in height. Barbara wasn't there that particular night, though, so I had hung them up. And we put them out on the ends of the branches, the little skinny ones. That way, if a raccoon crawls out on them, they're going to fall. They're not going to be able to get them. Well, these 5 glow necklaces were gone. We couldn't find them anywhere. And so 2 weeks later, we come back. We had some more stuff happen. And then 3 weeks later, on that second trip, we found, I think it was the second trip, we found that in the Killenfield area, there was what looked like could be a blind. And these 2 trees were pulled over and crisscrossed. They weren't real big ones. They were, smaller saplings. One was a cedar tree, so it was still green, had green on it. And the other one, didn't have any leaves on it. And Henry commented, that who knows, that could be used as a blind. He was just speculating. But what was weird is each tree had 2 snaps in them. And the snaps didn't go all the way, they weren't broken in 2. Mm-hmm. And they were almost the same distance apart on each of the trees. And, we commented about how weird that was. And then we had somebody come out later that weekend and actually look at that. And while we were out there, we commented about how weird it was that the trees weren't broken completely in 2 in all of these places. And we ended up putting a recorder right there in the tree, in the cedar tree, hit it there. And during that time, the second time we'd gone out there 2 weeks later, we saw that a lot of the bones were gone. It was just weird because they wouldn't have disintegrated that fast. And we walked around for what seemed like forever looking for, saying over and over, where are all the bones? Where are all the bones? And when this guy had come out there to look later that day, when we went up to show him the little blind, right there under that blind, there was a pile of bones, which had not been there earlier. And we have pictures of when we first found that blind. We took, we're calling it a blind. Of course, we have no clue. That's just what we're calling it. But we have pictures showing that there were no bones there. And then here a few hours later when, he comes out and we're like, oh, well, come here and look at this. I stepped up there and was shocked to see those bones. And so that was a little freaky.
Sure.
And then the next day, that next morning, we go to get the recorder, and those 4 snaps are now broken completely in 2. And then 3 weeks later, after that, Barbara comes out there for the first time. And Barbara, you want to tell about that? What happened when we were doing the firewood?
Well, we were sitting around and we were getting low on wood, and there was a big pallet propped up against a tree that the chimes had been hanging out of, that Debbie had talked about blowing. And I grabbed that pallet and just was going to start tearing it apart to throw into the fire. And when I did, 5 glow necklaces came rolling out from behind it. And I looked at Debbie and I said, did you put these back here? And she said, no, I didn't. Where did they come from? I said, well, they just rolled out from behind the pallet. But it was the 5 glow necklaces that had disappeared from the previous trip. Right.
Yep.
And they were put right under where the chimes were.
And that pallet had been there since that first night.
Yeah.
And so
they were under the pallet?
They were behind it.
Okay, it was leaned up against a tree, and they were behind it.
Right,
Okay.
it was leaned up against the tree,
That's
and the glow
crazy.
necklace. I guess they were laying up against the tree, and then when I pulled the pallet away, they just rolled out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that was really cool.
Yeah,
Well, the
and
fact that those bones showed up, I mean, you
that
know,
was really strange. Yes.
Yeah. And then that when Barbara came back, at that 3 weeks, when the glow necklaces rode out, even more bones were gone. I mean, Corps of Engineers, I don't think would have come out there. It was way out there, and they're not worried about bones, and it was weird.
do you think they got to the point where they like looked around and said, okay, we got to clean this up? You guys were out there. You kind of were onto what they were doing. You stumbled upon their killing field or whatever, their bone pile. Maybe they wanted to start, making it less obvious since you guys were there. I'm just guessing. I have no idea.
I don't know. We don't either. I mean, it baffled us. I know that the second time we were out there, Patty and I had walked. There was like a little trail that you could go back behind before you got back to the big open spot. And it was just she and I. And we had stopped and we were looking at what, we thought could be a possible print. But we were bent down looking at it, spent a few minutes, talking about it and taking pictures and stuff. And then we went on back into the big part of the killing field, and we'll cross over to the other side. Like I said, it's on top of a hill, and it kind of slopes down on each side, and there's water that comes up on each side of it. And so we had crossed over and then came back down and came up the side where this blind was. And then we went back over towards that print. And as we're looking at the print, we're like, what the heck is that? We could see something was laying in the print. And there was a bone laying right in the middle of that print that we had looked at earlier. And
that wasn't there earlier.
No. And I mean, it was stuff like that would happen. And then also, I think it was, Barbara, was it when the third time you were out there when we found all of those big hollowed out areas? Were you there then? I don't remember.
Yes, I was out there when we started finding them and be like little, what do you call them?
Well, they were
military little dugout things. What do you call them?
They were like
foxholes.
Yeah, foxhole, like foxholes. They could get down in and just spy above the ground.
Yeah, we didn't know what they were because when we first found that area, it was covered in leaves, and it still was after all those weeks. But these foxholes, I think there was 7 or 8 of them. They were scattered along the ridge line, and I laid in them. And I was 5'9". I think I've shrunk. I'm 5'8.5" now. But they were longer than I was. I was able to lay in them, and I couldn't see above, up above where the ground was at. And they were pretty big. We wondered if maybe they could be like where old trees were and had fallen and they were open for the roots, but they were all about the same size and length. It was just weird. And they were all on that ridge line. And we kind of, we don't know. Everything's speculation.
Sure.
But where it's at, you could see, if you stood up, you could see that it went down towards the little inlet there. And so we thought, well, maybe they get down here and one's down there and they're running those deer up. And when they get up there, they jump up or grab them by the leg and snap them in two. Who knows?
If you guys don't mind, I get the chat. My chat is always asking questions, and I usually don't wait till the end. I do kind of just throw them. Luis Maris wants to know, where was this at?
Southeast Oklahoma. I don't know why I said Arkansas. Southeast Oklahoma.
Okay. Mark Dogman had wanted to know, how do you guys choose your locations?
We look at the map. We look at topo maps and lay of the land, and or
We
if we hear
get good
something.
leads sometimes, and we'll get a lead of an area to go into, and then we go in and decide where we want to set up our camp. It's not like we go to a camp somebody told us about. They'll tell us the area, and we'll check it out and set up camp and see what happens for us.
Well, it
We-
just seems wherever you set up, you hit cold.
I'm telling you, it
Not all
does.
the time, but we've been
Not
lucky.
every time, but
Yeah.
a lot of times.
We had
I
two
can't
good
scroll
trips.
back. Sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
We had 2 good trips last week. I mean, not last week. Last year, we did the Ozarks, and then we went to the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, and we had a blast looking for Bigfoot. It was great. It's beautiful up there. Absolutely beautiful. If you get a chance to go, you need to. Just not for Bigfoot, but just to see how pretty it is.
Yeah, I want to do a lot of exploring coming up in the near future. It's a lot I want to see. I can't see where this question went, but Arizona Squatch had wanted to know, do you guys just ever sit in the dark, no fire, no lights, and just, do it that way at all?
Not really.
Well,
No.
Washington, we couldn't have a campfire because all the fires were going on. So that is one trip that we had no campfire, but we did have little lanterns or
Yeah.
headlamps. But usually we like to light it up. We hang up twinkling lights in the trees to make lights because they actually throw more shadows than you think.
Yeah.
If something walks between them, the lights in your tent, it throws good shadows. So, and if they can see us good, we like that. We want them to see that we're just little girls out there in the woods.
I warned you girls earlier. Bama Murdoch wants to know, have any of the sisters ever been flashed by someone on an ATV while in the woods?
Barbara.
We just talked about, yes.
Oh my goodness.
So it was hot, and Sandy and Debbie were in the tent, and I was out by my vehicle because we play music, and I was changing the channel on my radio and turning up the music. And these 2 4-wheelers come riding by, and this chick just, well, I go, oh my God, were they coming out the tent? They're going to say, think something's wrong. And I said, oh my God, I just got flashed.
Oh yeah, and me and
In the
Debbie
middle
was
of nowhere.
me and Debbie was laid in the tent, and we heard Barbara yelling, and Debbie said, "What did she say?" I said, "I think she said she just got flashed."
There was nobody out there like that whole weekend. And the one time that somebody, shows up, they flash Barbara.
Yeah.
Right on.
And then
That's funny.
And then in Washington, we walked up on a totally naked man.
We were hiking in the Olympic National Forest on a trail, and I actually had my video camera on top of my walking stick, and I had been filming, and I had just turned that sucker off. And we were walking side by side, and here crossing the trail is this dude with a fanny pack and a cap on and shoes and nothing else.
And a smile.
And he turns his head, and I swear he was in the patty pose, with his one arm out in front.
Perfect.
And we were like, holy crap.
Hey,
Well,
that
then
was
we
our
tried to
big
chase him down.
Yeah, we tried to. I went out. I was determined to kill this guy. Couldn't find him anywhere, and I thought, where did he go? Did he, And as I'm coming back, there I see movement over in the trees, and he's hunkered down in the trees like he was hiding. So we walk on a little ways, and then later on, these 2 guys come by on bicycles, and they stop, and we're talking about that, and he's like, this one guy said, oh yeah, he hides his clothes in the trees over there.
That was our big sighting, y'all.
But that right there tells you how fast a sighting can happen when you're not ready.
You better always be ready.
I know, but you know what's crazy? I got to thinking about it after all that happened is maybe 2 or 3 minutes before we saw this guy, I heard a whoop deep in the woods. Sandy and Debbie didn't hear it. They were on ahead of me, but I did hear a whoop, and then it's just a couple of minutes or so, and we come up on a naked man.
That was
You
a
sure that
female
was a whoop?
in the woods. Yeah, watch
That's
out,
what
women.
Woo-hoo!
Awesome. Sean Patterson wants to know, do Squatch look like Patty or more human in your area?
Well, I've never seen the face of one. I've only
Okay.
seen the body as it was running. And I wish I want to see the face, I think. But I've never seen a face.
No, me either. I wish.
We've seen
I'm
silhouettes
ready. I think
through
I am.
tents, walk by our tents. We've seen the silhouette, but you couldn't make out a face through a silhouette.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that must have been incredible to see something that size and shape, and just and you're 5 feet away from it.
We
Oh,
weren't
we've been
even 5
closer
foot
than
away.
that.
But you know what I mean. It's
We
you have
were
that,
like
that
a foot away from it, Debbie.
with a piece
Yeah.
of tissue paper separating you. I
Yeah,
mean,
and that nylon, it feels like Fort Knox at the time, but one
it's like
particular night, yeah, he was just on the other side, and we couldn't sing for nothing. We tried so hard.
wow.
That was pretty cool.
Whit Helton says you need to make a trip to Uwharrie National Forest in North Carolina. Uwharrie. Uwharrie. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how to pronounce that.
Is
We
that
need-
close to like North Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina come together?
Okay.
I
I'm
don't know. I'm
guessing.
asking
I'm guessing. I'm
Yeah, I don't know.
because that's
Let's
a great area. We've been in North Georgia squatching, and we had a really eventful trip up there.
Yeah, there was a rock thrown into camp and right between Patty and Sandy's head. And I saw it coming in, and I said, rock. And it came down and it hit the bucket that they had set between them, using it as a little end table. And I think, Sandy, don't you still have that rock?
I do have that rock. That's my prize rock.
Yeah, it rode
was
right
a
above
gift.
her feet.
Ray Daw says, ask Deb about having her name called.
Yeah, I didn't know they were calling my name at the time until we listened back to it on the recorder. But that's creepy when I finally, well, actually, we had taken Shelly Reed with Beast, Sawdust Beast Group.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a laptop or anything for a long time until the wonderful Jeff Townsend bought me one. And thank you, Jeff, again. But that was a year and a half, I think, after the killing field and then the place that we call Tribulation Bay, which is when extraordinary stuff happened and something was hitting our tent and we heard gibberish and a tree crash and we had whoops and howls and sounds that sounded like a truck motor and moans and growls and all different animal sounds and mechanical saw sounds. I mean, stuff that I never dreamed that, I never could imagine this stuff. And it was just me and another girl, Carrie, by ourselves that first night. And that gibberish, had happened. Henry showed up. We didn't know she was there, but she got there just a little before 4 a.m. And she had pulled up and said that she saw something run away from what was my side of the tent and was running down a ridge line. And that happened right after the gibberish and right before the tree fell. She said she heard the tree crash while she was in her vehicle. She slept in her vehicle that night, and she did that a lot. And then the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, Barbara got there, And so it was that evening that when I had first gotten there that first night, Carrie was already putting up the tent. And this was in September.
Go ahead.
And
That was an accident.
and so it was mid-September, and it got dark, later. And so I didn't get there till like 7:30, and we were putting up the tent. And so I didn't have time to put my recorders out before all of this started. And, it was the different moans and animal sounds that it would moan and then change into what sounded like a sick chicken. It would moan or growl, whatever. I mean, the only way I could explain it at that time was like a moan, because I had never heard any growls or anything like that before then. But it would do that and then change into what sounded like a sick dog, whimpering dog, kind of like it was crying. It would moan or growl and then turn into what sounded like a cow, a moo sound. And now I wonder if it was like a loud moan, that it would change into. And then one time it did it and changed into a bear growl. And that's when we left. It was pretty creepy, and it had gotten dark, starting to get dark by that time. And so we decided that we would leave and go into the nearest town to get some bear spray, because we knew there was bear in the area. Now, we didn't see any, cows close by when we were coming in, no chickens, and this was in the woods.
Sure.
And so, it was weird, and it kind of went up an incline over to, off from the side of our tent, and it was that night that it was just me and Carrie by ourselves, and all of this other stuff had started happening. After we got back from going into town to get the bear spray, we were gone about, I'd say 2 hours at the most. And before we left, I went ahead and got a recorder out and set it on my car and left it in. And that whole time we were gone, there wasn't a sound. I mean, not a sound. And as soon as we got back, that's when it started up again. And then, that's when we started hearing howls and whoops and all that other, the mechanical saw sounding, the truck motor sounds. And I mean, we talked about it, like that truck, the mechanical saw sound. We thought, is that a boat motor, or is that a saw? Or, I mean, nothing made sense, because it sounded like it was coming from right in front of us in those woods. And so when we finally went in the tent, that's when it picked up and started hitting our tent, and we could hear stuff dragging something along the back of our tent, and we're watching it as it's doing that, and we're looking over our shoulder, and it's hesitating over where our potty was. And that's when something hit our tent again in the opposite corner. So that's when we knew there were two of them. And then later on, that night is when we heard the gibberish, and it sounded like two or three different ones. It actually sounded like two younger ones talking to each other, just real short. And then like a third one had come in, and in my head, the way it sounded like the two were further away, and that the third one that came in was closer, in between the tent and the other two, whatever, And then, once that third one came in, it sounded like, to me, like it was getting on to them. Like, you leave these women alone and get your butts out of here. But we didn't know at that time, because the tree crashed just within, short time after that, real soon. But we didn't know that Henry had pulled up. And as soon as we got in the tent, before that happened, we started hearing this coughing sound, and it sounded like a 2-syllable cough. It was like, well, I thought it was Henry, because we were expecting her. We never knew when she was going to show up, And so I even looked over at Carrie, and I said, Henry's here. And so I unzipped the window, and look out, don't see nothing. And I hollered for Henry. And by this time, I had set 2 recorders on each side of the tent, because I wasn't about to walk out in those woods after all of that stuff had been going on, And so I just set 1 recorder on each side of the tent. And anyway, Henry wasn't there. I zipped it back up. I tell Carrie, I said, Henry's not here. And then we hear the cough sound again, but it's at a different angle. It's like it's going from straight in front of us over to the right side a little bit. And so I unzip it again, and I take a big, floodlight type thing, and I shine it out there, and I holler for Henry, and I do her whole name, nothing's out there. So I zip it back up, and I step to the middle of the tent because now I'm telling Carrie, I'm like, did you hear that? And she shook her head no, and pointed to her ear, and she said, I can't hear out of this ear, which I didn't know that at the time. And so she sits up, and I told her, I said, it sounded like a human cough, because that's what it sounded like to me. Well, in the process of that night, we hear it move around our tent and hear it 7 or 8 times. And we were worried that it was some redneck bubbas, because it sounded human to us. And so that's when we decided we're going to go out of our tent just to see. And so we had our guns and we got our key fobs, and we stand at the door side by side and wait till we hear movement, because we wanted to be able to catch them, and prove that even though we'd been having all this activity that was, Bigfoot related, we thought it was more Bigfoot sounds, but then all that stuff, other stuff we couldn't explain, the motor and the power saw sound and stuff, all the different animals. So we go bailing out of that tent when we heard movement, and we hit our key fob so our lights on our cars would come on, and we have our guns, and don't see anything. Well, we do that twice. And the second time we started our engines so the lights would stay on longer. Nothing. So that next day after Barbara got there, I decided I'm going to hang my recorders out really early and make sure that I have them out there before it gets dark, And I had hung one up, and I go over to this other area, and I put them back there where we had heard all this noise. So while I'm hanging up the second one, I hear from the area that first recorder's in, that same cough sound. Now, we had told Barbara and Henry everything that had happened the night before, and Barbara had been out hanging the glow necklaces, because we try to hang glow necklaces and stuff, or have twinkle lights or whatever wherever we go. And so they were hanging out glow necklaces, and so my first thought was that was Barbara coughing. And you can hear me on the other recorder that I already had hung up and playing, that I call Barbara's name. I go, there's Miss Barbara. And I'm looking over there. I don't see anything because I heard the cough. And I turned my head and looked straight at it. There was nothing there. And then, she did. I didn't see Barbara. And so I go, Barbara? I call her again. Barbara. Well, then she answers me from way back there, back where our tent and camp area is out. And I turn around and I ask her, I said, did you cough? And she's like, no. And I said, did any of you cough? And she said, no. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I hide over there. And so when, I didn't know Mark and Larry at the time. I met them actually 2 weeks later at a convention type thing. And of course, Larry and I, became an item, and he kept telling me, you've got to get that off of your recorder, because what happens, if something happens to that recorder. And I didn't have anything to do it on. I had my kids' old laptop, but they hadn't used it since they were in school, and that had been years earlier. But when we finally did get it transferred over to Shelley Reed's, she put flash drive. She put them on a flash drive for me while we were camping one time. And then we put that flash drive into a computer, and finally we're getting to hear it better. And it was when that flash drive was on the computer playing over some speakers, you could hear what we thought was that cough that I thought was Barbara. And that's where it sounds like it says, hey, Debbie. Just,
wow.
It gives
Awesome.
it gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's freaky.
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy. Some people in chat were asking, Sandy, people are saying, tell us about the baby Bigfoot in your yard?
Oh goodness. Okay. It was in March of 2017. Um, I had a home at that time. I was living in a town called Jessup, Georgia, and there was a wood line behind my home, and pretty much a lot of woods. I lived out in the country somewhat. Um, I had an above ground pool that had a white background off to the side of my bedroom. And it was overcast, not quite full moons, but you really couldn't see like you could with a direct full moon. It was starting to get where you could see out in the yard somewhat, though. And I had a little teacup chihuahua. Her name was Sadie. And every night she woke me up to go potty. Well, every night before I'd let her out to go potty because she weighed 2 pounds full grown. And we do have, raccoons or anything that could get a hold of her and hurt her. I had a glass back door with a curtain over it. It was like a patio glass door. And I always pulled back the curtain and I would look to see if anything was out in the yard before I'd let her go outside. Well, I pulled back the curtain. I usually turned on the porch light first, but this night I did not. And I pulled back the curtain and I seen movement going back and forth by my pool area. It was incredibly fast. I'm gonna say it was about 4.5 foot tall, maybe a little bit more. But I know my pool was like 52 inches tall, and the white background. Whenever this, and I think it was a baby Sasquatch. I really do. I've thought long and hard about this. I can't think of anything else it could have been. It would move right back and forth incredibly speeds in front of my pool, back and forth like it was super excited. And while it was in front of my white background pool, I could see it. And then it would dart into the middle of my yard. And when it would dart into the middle of my yard, I couldn't see it no more. It was too dark because the background then was just the black wood line. And I was and I what in the world did I just see? I kept saying to myself, and then just a moment later, it would be back in front of my pool again, doing that crazy rapid back and forth, like it was, just super excited about something.
That's
like back and
amazing.
forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then it would disappear again and get right back into my front yard. I'm not front yard, but right in the center of my backyard where I couldn't see it anymore. And I said, my God, am I losing my mind? What am I watching here? I even closed my eyes. I said, no, I'm not seeing this. I opened my eyes up, and sure enough, it was doing that same little crazy back and forth in front of the pool where I could see it again. Its body was dark, and I could tell it was upright, and it had legs, it had arms, and those arms were just moving super fast as it was going back and forth. And I watched it do that. Gosh, over a 3 or 4 minute period, I just was like, oh my God. And it would cut to the front, center of the yard again. I said, okay, all right, I've had it. I'm fixing to turn the light on and see what's going on here. As soon as I turned on the light, sure enough, it was gone. You couldn't see nothing no more. But I did see an armadillo in my backyard where it kept darting to. All right, an armadillo.
Armadillos.
In South Georgia, they're armadillos.
They're armadillos.
but it gave clarity to me that whatever was going on, it was playing with that armadillo or whatever, or it was trying to catch it or something. But that let me know that I totally was not insane, because
Not totally, just a little bit.
just a little. But and the next day I tried to go out there and take photos, but all I got was where the armadillo had been scratching up in the yard. That was it. There was no other proof I could find. And I'm positive. In my mind, I know that's what I seen. And I also know that, with that being said, if that was a baby and it was trying to play with the armadillo, there was brothers, sisters, or somebody in that wood line watching that as well. So
More than likely, yeah.
yeah.
Tell them about what your grandkids saw and your daughter in the window.
Well, this is something totally different. Didn't live too far from town, and my granddaughter, who was, I guess she was about around 10 then. She and her girlfriend was at the house, and I had to run into town real quick to get something. And they said, "Oh, we'll be all right, Nana. Just let us stay here. Let us stay here." Well, I wasn't gone maybe 20 minutes at the most. I just ran to where I had to get and come back. And when I got back home, Jalen was just in a panic. She was upset, and her girlfriend, her little girlfriend that was there with her, she's like, "Yeah, I seen it too." She says, "I don't know what's going on." They claimed that they seen a wolf, a big wolf, just sat behind my fenced-in back porch and was just sitting there, just glaring at them through the window. And the way she was describing this wolf, that wolf would have been huge, but they both were just in a panic. And they said as soon as I pulled up, they said it left. But they swear, Jalen still swears today, "Nana, I'll never be at your house again by myself because that wolf was just staring us down through it was weird, through the porch." I didn't know there was any wolves there. But,
well, it had to be tall to be able to see in your window.
well, yeah, because my back porch was probably raised 4.5 foot, and they were sitting in the living room, and it was probably another 1/2 foot up, and they could see its head as it was sitting there through the yard, just sitting there looking at them, just staring at them.
Wow.
It's like it wasn't intimidated at all. Which them girls were. Jalen was crying. She was hysterical.
When it walked away on all fours.
She said that is what happened, but she said, "Nana, it scared me."
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about the Dogman stuff, but it makes me wonder sometimes, makes me scratch my head about that every now and then. So
Yeah, that's a whole nother subject.
it is a whole other
The
subject.
Dogman. I mean, like I said, I told you, you ladies earlier that I've only been into this whole Bigfoot subject for about 3 years now, and it's funny once you get into one cryptic thing, something, all of a sudden you start hearing about all this other stuff, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what? A dog? What?
I know it.
Yeah, I'm like, one cryptid at a time, please.
I know it.
I don't want Dogman to exist.
No, I
No,
don't.
No,
that,
and I don't think a lot of other people do either.
No.
that was my biggest fear as a child, was a werewolf.
Mine too. I used to have nightmares about werewolves
Yes,
running around my house.
I actually did too when I was a kid. Werewolves and for some reason Frankenstein, but I was young.
That was scared me to death.
But yeah, like I said, she couldn't fake. She was hysterical. She couldn't fake that crying and those tears. It's like she grabbed me and was just squeezing me so hard. So glad I was home. And
And
Okay.
your daughter heard heavy breathing.
yeah, yeah, my daughter and her husband were separated for a little while, so she came and stayed with me, her and Jadlyn, and it wasn't long. It was around the time really when I had my sighting of the juvenile, and it was perfect outside. It was like 50 degrees outside, so instead of turning on the air, we'd often just crack the windows at night. Well, Jennifer said on more than one occasion she thought that her daughter was just having difficulty breathing, just like like. And she said that, I know that's the only way I can describe it, but she said that. Hey, I'm not really good. All righty.
Go ahead, Miss Storyteller.
I'm trying to get this thing perfect.
You're making me dizzy.
Oh,
I had to plug my phone in. It was dying. But anyways, one night she thought Jalen was having a really difficult time breathing. And so she bent over to actually get right up on her to listen to her. And she said it wasn't Jalen breathing at all. She said the sound was actually coming from the window.
Oh,
So
wow.
that kind of freaked Jennifer out.
deep nasal.
Yeah, like a
sound.
deep nasal. Like, I'm not going to try to do that anymore.
Uh,
But it did,
Wow.
Hazel, like it was something was really stuffed up and was having difficulty breathing. And she said,
And,
Mom, I thought it was my daughter. And she said, it wasn't. It was from that stupid window.
and you hear that a lot of stories of the way they breathe. It's a really deep, raspy, just congested, you know, probably like me after about 100-yard dash, you know, not out of shape.
But yeah,
So it's interesting how they have that they make that much noise when they breathe.
I know it.
So guys, if anybody has questions in chat, please put them in caps. Ask anytime. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We have 113 watching right now. It's great to see everybody. Thanks for showing up tonight, guys. Wow, these are some crazy stories.
Oh, we
Yeah.
have done more. But
we have
No, we got plenty of time.
scratched the surface. Sandy found us a really good place in Georgia that she tells that good story.
Which
When we went to Georgia about the area we were in, and
well, we did. We had a lot of great things happen. I mean, what our last night there, we had stuff thrown on the tent. I mean, wads of stuff.
yeah,
The impact of them, it was being thrown so hard, it even went over on Debbie and Patty's tent. Um, we heard we heard howls. We heard sound like motors sometimes, and it was just a really interesting place. And the location, it would take you 30 minutes from the bottom of the mountain to get to the top where you would go stay. I mean, it was very, very remote.
hmm
And there was an abandoned campground there that a lot of people's had interest in stories and things happen. It made no absolute sense. It's still, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to hold this stupid phone.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. But anyways, I'm trying. My phone's about to die. But that abandoned campground absolutely makes no sense to me. Still, the campground is amazing.
Is that the
And
campground that's the state park?
it was. I don't know if it's
Supposedly it
national.
was flooded or tornadoes
Yes,
and
and there's
yeah.
absolutely no reason
Okay.
that it can.
We-
I don't see any reason why it should not have been opened up.
I wrote that down because I wanted to ask you, have you guys been back to that since, you know, your original?
Yeah, me and Debbie and Larry and Mark and my niece Stephanie, and we all went back there
And we camped in there. We weren't
Yes.
supposed to, but we
You know, I
did.
know you like to camp where you're not supposed to. I know.
oh yeah, we do.
And keep doing it.
Yeah,
Hey,
we will.
yeah, we
So what happened? You were saying about you didn't understand. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to make sure that was the state park you were
It
talking
is
about.
the same exact place. Well, I was told, I was told by my girlfriend who's talked to locals around there that lives in that area that was their excuse to close it down when all that happened. But the truth is people were being scared to death in there, and I'm sure they were saying it was bears, but the locals around there said, oh no, it wasn't locals at all. It was just actual Bigfoots in there that was terrorizing people. And I can believe it because of all the activity we had that one little trip we went.
yeah.
Also, there's stories that she found out from locals of a man leaving and abandon his tent because he was approached by one, and the man, if you don't know about Bigfoot and something like that approaches you, of course you're going to be petrified. And he abandoned everything. They said that's happened up there numerous times. People not know anything about Bigfoot, something like
That's
that.
what we were talking about earlier. That sudden paradigm shift where no clue. Wow. I have a question actually from Lynn Parsons. Any advice for a new girl researcher? And she is a new girl researcher, literally. She's going to be doing some research in the near future. So, any advice?
I would say one, don't do by yourself. Make sure you have somebody with you. Also, make sure you have a firearm, not to protect yourself so much from Sasquatch, but from wild animals and crazy people.
Exactly.
And
That's-
take stuff for measurements in case you do find footprints. If you've got room to take you some plaster of Paris, take that with you as well. So maybe you can find and be fortunate enough to cast a good print and read up on how to do it properly. That's my advice. Y'all got any more for?
Well, just be a silly girl out in the woods, giggle and laugh and sing, and if they're there, they'll come to you. You don't have to go out in the middle of the night. I don't think walk around in the dark.
which
To
we've
find
done
it.
that too.
We have, but I don't like to do it because there's just so much you can't see that can be out there besides the Bigfoot
Yeah.
that'll harm you. So it's always worked for us to make our camp, and we go out and explore during the day, but at night we are in camp. And if we have a fire, we have a fire. We're sitting around it laughing and joking and just being campers.
Yeah. We act like we don't know a thing about them.
Yeah, we
We
just
totally ignore them.
yeah, we just listen, and I mean we signal each other, or did you hear that, or can you hear that?
We say that a lot.
A lot, all the time. But
And we try to make a lot of noise. We want to draw the attention to us,
Sure.
Because I believe they're curious creatures, and but one thing I do suggest, of course, like they said, carry a firearm, but we always try to not let it be seen.
Sure.
We don't want them to know we have a gun, because I think they know what guns are. They're in the woods,
Absolutely.
hunters. We don't want them to feel threatened by us. We want to appear as the weaker sex, but we're not necessarily the weaker sex. I think
another
So
thing,
it's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
used to think going out in the woods that I need to be camoed up. Well, I've kind of changed my mind about that because I got to wondering that, well, what if they associate camo with hunters? So I just go out there wearing everyday clothes. I don't try to look like Rambo. I
And
just
I
look
hear that a lot too. Everybody's like, go out there, do your thing, don't look obvious, and they will come to you.
yeah.
Yeah. And
You
that's
know, and
exactly every time.
that's
I
good
know.
advice.
I don't think we've had any really things happen when we went out and looked for them. I think everything happens when we just sit around and pretend like they're not around.
Yeah, our best stuff has happened in camp.
Right.
We found some really cool stuff, asterisks and trees uprooted and moved completely away from where they originally were and stuck up in trees and, stuff like that. But nothing is as awesome as having them hit our tents and talking, gibberish. And
It's awesome now, but at the time, I'm sure it was petrifying.
well, I got to say, it was pretty dang cool.
Oh
But
yeah.
the worst part about it was those coughs, because that's what we carry a gun for, is the redneck bubbas, and
Mhm.
there are bad people out there, and we are female, and then we carry them also for big cats, and it's not gonna do much to a hog, I don't think, because our hogs are pretty daggone big, but and it sure ain't gonna stop a Bigfoot. The guns are useless as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, we carry guns for other humans. And but
No, that's great advice. I know there's somebody else in chat that should be listening to that advice. They're going out on a expedition soon too. Lori LeBlanc wants to know, how often do you ladies get together to go out into the bush?
as often as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Debbie and I are in Texas, and we get together more often because Sandy's in Georgia, but she does try to come out 2 or 3 times a year, or we just travel everywhere.
We
We've
do.
been all over everywhere in different places, trying out, and our little technique seems to work wherever we're at.
A lot of times, not always, but
Well, yeah, you don't have something every single time, absolutely, but the majority of the time, yeah.
Barbara and I loaded up, and Patty, and we drove across all the southeast over to Georgia. And that's when we camped up there in Sandy's neck of the woods. And then Barbara drove with her dog, Ellie, drove from Texas all the way up to Oregon. And Sandy and I flew from our home states to Oregon. That's when we were going to camp in Oregon. We'd already made plans, and then all the fires started. And so we had to figure something out. And we thought about going down to North Washington around, Willow Creek, but there were fires all around there too. And so Mark and Larry had just had Shane Corson on from the Olympic Project, had just had him on their show, Beast TV. And he's just the nicest guy in the world. And he lives up in Washington. And so me and Barbara and Sandy were talking, and I was like, well, let's see, about Washington. I've always wanted to go to the OP, and I think they had too. And so I contacted Shane, and I said, do you know of any place, up in the Olympic National Forest where we can camp? I said, we don't want to be in a campground. We don't want to be around people. And he said, let me think and get back to you. And so later that evening, when I was talking to him, he said, well, why don't you come on up here to our place? And oh my gosh, that was just unbelievable. It was just awesome. And so we went up there. They have a great big research area right there in the forest, Olympic Forest. And he said, y'all can camp here. You can camp in the forest. And the first night we set up a tent on the property. And then the next day, I think it wasn't it, Barbara, or the next day or two? Can't remember. We moved back into the forest more. And that's where we had some really cool stuff happen there.
We did.
And we couldn't have a fire. And so that's when we had the little bitty lantern. We were all sitting around the lantern, had the lantern in the middle of us like it was a fire. But
the last time I went camping, I was up on the Mogollon Rim here, and there was a fire ban. And just for shits and giggles, I had recorded a fire burning in my fire pit with my computer. So I just put the computer right into the fire pit, push play. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, there's the fire, Dad.
Well, I heard the Coleman lantern. That was the closest thing we had to fire.
I have a question for you ladies, and it's gonna start with Sandy, then Barbara, then Debbie. And Stephanie Perez wants to know, what is your opinion about them knowing your intent when you go in the woods?
All right. Well, we go out there and we act very peaceful. We're not aggressive. I think they fully get our intent that we're not out there to harm them at all, because that is not our intentions. We're just out there to see what they do, to learn more about them all we can. And I think they feel that peacefulness about us. And I think they have a great sense of the people and their character and their personalities. And honest to goodness, I think that's why we stay, I must say, pretty successful. I know every time we go out, we don't always have activity. We can go out 3 or 4 nights in a row and maybe just one night have something happen, that night. But it's like they always, they come to us. And we go out there and I've even heard Barbara say it out loud a couple of times. We're just here in peace. We're not here to harm anyone or anything. it's like, she's talking to surroundings, and we know they don't understand us, but maybe they can feel that vibe coming off. So that's mine.
Maybe they do understand you.
Maybe, I don't know.
Mhm.
I kind of think they do to a certain extent.
I think some things, yeah. They definitely understood enough to bring the bones back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they pick it up from our body language and us pointing and hearing what we're saying. Like we'd point to the bone, we'd pick up the bone, be talking about it. I think, it's kind of like kids learning new words and association. I think they're intelligent creatures. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I think everybody can agree on that. And so I think they can understand, what we're doing, or at least some of it to a certain extent.
Yeah, I've kind of gotten that feeling that they do know intent. I've heard it before. A lot of friends of mine who are active researchers truly believe it. They know what you're there to do and what your intent is. Like I trust my dog's intent, like his her, I should say. How she reacts to people. That's how I trust her.
Yeah.
Like I had a roommate come in. I said, "Yeah, you can move in if my dog lets you." If my
Yeah.
dog gets along with you, you're good. Because I believe dogs can and other animals know people's intent and know if you're a bad person or a good person. So of course, I 100% believe that a creature with that much intelligence, would know your intent.
Yeah.
So.
I do too.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for that question. And ladies, thank you for answering that. Now I got to scroll down and see what else we got here.
I think they learn a lot about our behavior because they definitely know snoring means sleeping. So if they hear
Well,
the
I'm sure they
snore,
snore as well.
they come up and they start messing with you. They can hear us snoring. That's when they come up and plunder around. Because the trip to Georgia, our niece was with us, and she's very light sleeper. It still makes her nervous being out there in the woods in a tent and this big old creatures outside. But the chimes were up in the tree, and you could hear the wind just gently blowing them, and they just sounded peaceful. Well, all of a sudden, they just start going thrum, 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 and it really got our attention. And we weren't snoring so much then. We were starting to talk amongst each other, and then started throwing rocks and dirt and pebbles on our tent. And that's the night they threw it all the way. They were throwing it so hard it went all the way across our tent onto the top of Debbie's tent, which we had our two tents close together, so we could get into each tent if we wanted to.
Yeah, we had them kind of connected by our doors, and mine had the mesh over it, and we had it connected that way. We could see each other. We had the doors open where we could see each other.
But they test us out to see if we're paying attention or if we're good and sound asleep.
Well, I thought it was interesting. You said earlier, somebody said when somebody'd roll over in a sleeping bag or something, they'd stop moving. They'd hear that little,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crow Creek Crypt has asked, did the ladies have any tree fall when they're around?
Yes.
Yeah. Just like I was talking about the night of the that we heard the gibberish and all of that. I mean, it wasn't right after the gibberish had ended that literally I could hear it was like the snapping of wood, and then it sounded like splintering, and then it just crashed to the ground. And that's when evidently Henry had just gotten there, because she heard it too, and while she was in her vehicle. And so we've had that happen, and then I've been out with others, and Larry and I and Spencer Jameson, we were camping up in Daniel Boone, and I probably shouldn't have said that, but oh well. Anyway, but
Say
anyway,
what?
we had
Couldn't hear anything.
we were going up and was hammock camping, and we'd just gotten up there, and we weren't there. It didn't seem like 5 minutes, and it was like right there, tree went down, and the whole time we had been there for almost a week, and we had been down in more of a camp area, and there was more of us down there, but I think there was like 6 or 7 trees had gone down during that week. And so, yeah, we don't know if they were all Bigfoot related, but it just seems mighty strange.
Yes.
I mean, for a tree to go down as soon as you get there, that's like it's an attention getter.
Yeah.
Well, Sandy and I were at the Bigfoot conference in Jefferson, Texas one year, and after the conference, we were sitting out at our little campsite where we weren't supposed to be, and I was playing the gibberish for my niece, and I played it twice, and just immediately after I finished playing, and it was boom, 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 three booms, and then something was coming towards us out of the woods. You could feel it coming up behind you. You couldn't see it. It's pitch black. It's raining, but you could feel it coming. And I don't know. I can't tell you for positive if it was tree fall or them jumping out of trees. I definitely know there was more than 2. If it was Bigfoot, there was more than 2 because it came on each side of our tent when it came past us. But that was a wild night that night. We didn't know what was fixing to happen to us. That was a scary night. It's exciting now to talk about it, but at the time it was scary because we didn't know what we had
Oh, so remember Stephanie? What was that we had out there to drink? Some hot damn or something? And she drank a bottle.
Oh, what is that? Fireball.
Fireball. She was petrified, bless her heart, which I was scared too.
And
that stuff will give you a hangover.
And she kept drinking it. And Bob was like, "You better quit drinking it."
Yeah, she was nervous. Cause my first trip, I was like everybody else. I was scared to death. I thought Bigfoot was behind every tree.
You know me. I was going to bed one night.
Wait, it's not behind every tree?
Yeah. I was just convinced that he was going to grab me.
What's so cool about that too, though, is she had played the gibberish that was recorded from Oklahoma. They were in Texas. The gibberish was recorded in Oklahoma. And if you remember, I told you it sounded like something was getting on to something else,
Scolding them.
In my head, it was like, y'all get your butts out of here and leave these women alone.
Yeah.
And it was just so weird that when she played it, something was there and they got the heck out of there too.
They did.
And it makes you wonder, do they recognize what was recorded on that recording?
I feel like they understood exactly what was being said, and it was, "Hey, get out of here."
And
we nicknamed it Bigfoot Be Gone because it seemed to make them leave.
And that was over a year later too. It was
it
year and a half or something later, and totally different state.
Miss
Realdale wants to know: have you guys ever played music for him?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yes. We either crank up the stereo in the car or we pull up some Indian flute music. I love to hear that. So
I do too.
Sure. Yeah.
We enjoy playing that.
What other music do you play?
Oh, just 70s rock and roll.
All sorts.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard you didn't like Zeppelin, but
yeah.
Or we'll sit there and we'll sing.
Yeah.
Of course, that might scare them off.
Hey, we have country music night, rock and roll night, reggae night.
Flute night.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yes, music. I think they like music.
What's the old expression? Music soothes the savage beast.
Exactly.
There you go.
Prairie fire, probably not. How about black metal? Nah, probably not.
No, I haven't done that.
That's sure to get an ass whooping.
Yeah, we don't want to piss them off.
Word.
We don't want to get them too round up.
No, let's don't.
Yeah, Mark, since I'm wearing the shirt, I wonder how they'd respond to ACDC. Mark is down in Australia.
Down under. I'd love to go there.
Yeah, we've got people from all over the world. That's what I find so amazing doing this.
Yeah.
New Zealand, Australia, England, South Africa, just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
man.
awesome.
Pretty cool.
It is.
It is.
I mean, because the majority of people, if you talk about Bigfoot, they think there's one of them. This one Bigfoot goes
Guilty.
everywhere. But they're groups, they're families, they're tribes, I feel like. And,
Oh yeah.
you
You could 4 years ago. You couldn't have convinced me of this. I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Now it's like, "Oh yeah, of course."
and they do act different. Like I was saying earlier before the show, I think the Oklahoma Bigfoot are more vocal, or especially in the southeast part where we go, they're more vocal. And in Washington, I heard that one whoop deep in the woods, and then Sandy and I heard two whoops the last weekend we were there, and that's all the vocals we heard.
And they seem to be a little more aggressive in the South, like in Georgia for some reason. They throwing rocks and stuff at the tent and never had that happen before. So
Running
they're
through
a
the
little bit
woods,
more feisty around there.
you could
No,
hear
up in Washington, we were sitting around that little lantern. It was just the three of us, and that's when we were back up in the forest, and there were trees all the way around us. We'd come in on a little forestry trail, and so you could look down that away, and that's where there was this opening. But other than that, we were surrounded by trees, and I had my back, to some trees, and it sounded like, to me, I thought it was a downpour. It just sounded like something was coming through those trees, and I got up and got on the other side over there, closer to the tent where I was looking, and I told them, I said, at first I said, "Is it raining?" And we were like, "No," and that's when it started getting closer, and I got up and got on the other side and was facing it, and you could hear something running through those trees, and it went all the way down to where that forestry trail had started. I mean, we were sitting there watching it. It sounded like something crashing through the trees. I remember thinking, is this a herd of elk or what? Because you could just hear it just crashing through there. It went all the way down to where that trail started. You could hear it go across over there, and then it came up the side that we were on, that our tent was on, and it got right up to the side of our tent and just stopped, just completely stopped. And that was so freaky.
Yeah.
The hell
Talk
out.
about unnerving. You expect it to keep going and it stops there. You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, don't
Right
stop there."
Yeah.
really.
And
Oh my gosh.
was
It
it the
was
night?
crazy.
Was it the night before or the night before that y'all had hung the like Mardi Gras beads out, and Barbara, you hung the bells out and stuff?
It was
Right.
the night before, because I didn't know those necklaces were gone until we started unpacking to leave, and they took every stinking one of those necklaces.
Yes.
And
And I
then
bet I hung 8 or 10 of them out there. Not one could be found.
Barbara's bells, she had hung 3 of them on the side closest to our tent, but you couldn't find one of them, right, Barbara?
Right. Well, that night when we heard the rustling to the trees, we heard one of the bells fall and hit the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, we
And
could
then
hear a bell.
look for it the next day. It was on the back side of the tree.
Yeah, it was on the opposite side of the tree that it had started on. But
Yeah.
Sandy, the first night that we camped in that location, we'd just gotten up and she went back behind the tent with the FLIR and was looking through something and called me over there. And she said, look and see if you see like this heat signature. And by the time she handed it to me and I looked, I couldn't see it. But tell them how it looked to you, Sandy.
It looked like a full silhouette. I mean, it looked like I could see the shape of a head. I could see the shape of shoulders and arms. And it was standing by a tree back in that area. And it was just swaying gently back and forth. And I could not believe what I thought I was seeing. So I called Debbie over and I tried to hold the FLIR as steady as possible so it wouldn't move. I said, Debbie, you got to look at this. Come look. I want your opinion. Come look at this. And whenever she started looking through the FLIR, it was gone.
It already dropped down, I think. Yeah.
But it was just like swaying. I've never seen that before. Never.
And Sandy,
I've heard about the swaying all the time. That's consistent.
I mean, she said she could see the arm sticking out to the side, and
like it.
But she didn't know the FLIR would record.
I did not.
She does now, though.
Opportunity
yes,
lost.
now.
But now you know. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get lucky again.
So on some like the gibberish and stuff you recorded, did you ever have it analyzed like with against native languages or anything?
David Ellis of the Olympic Project analyzed it. I sent it to him, and then he contacted me and wanted to talk to me on the phone. And he asked me lots of questions about, the night it was recorded. I told him everything, as much detail as I could. He had tons of questions, which was awesome. He wanted to get, the whole story and everything. And we corresponded, via emails and messenger and talking on the phone and all that. He actually said it was some of the best audio to ever come across his desk.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And he sent that in a message. I have that saved, but he also ran it through his whatever types of programs he has.
Sure.
He talked to Mark and Larry both. He sent it to Mark, I think. He broke it down. Now, I don't understand a lot of this. I'm not very technical minded when it comes to that kind of stuff. Thank goodness we have people like David Ellis, and he's a crypto linguist, I guess you could call him. But he understands how to do all this, and so he also wrote it all down, typed it out, sent it to me. Talked about how he broke it down into 5 different sections, the gibberish. He thought that he could hear, more than one. I think he said it was 2 or 3. I'd have to look now. I can't remember. That he broke it down into, and he could hear phonemes. I think that's how you say it, phonemes. And that he slowed it down. And that even when he slowed it down, it was still faster than humans can speak. And he actually asked if he could contact Ron Moorhead, and I told him, of course. I also talked to Ron Moorhead. He and I corresponded. He listened to it. He was really excited about it. I told him it was from Southeast Oklahoma. He asked about where in Southeast Oklahoma. He has a friend that lives there, and she has heard very similar stuff. And so he asked, according to where she lived, how far were we from there? And as a crow flies, we were like maybe 20 miles, And so he thought that was really interesting. And so he said that he was going to try to get it to Scott Nelson. And we haven't heard anything from Scott Nelson. But I mean, David and Ron are both, awesome people. And, I just want to add, never in our wildest dreams, I think I speak for Sandy and Barbara too, did we ever imagine any of this stuff ever happening?
No.
You ladies figured you just get together and go camping and hang out on weekends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
surprise!
We'd hoped we'd hear some whoops or howls,
Yeah.
But we never dreamed that this. I mean, this has been a huge blessing, we feel like, but
I think it's amazing.
We also never imagined that these people like David Ellis and Ron Moorhead, that, they're like stars.
They're up here.
Yeah. Never imagined that they'd be listening to something that we got lucky enough to record or experience. And then to be as nice and down to earth and helpful as they are. I mean, they're awesome people.
Yeah.
Awesome people.
That's really important to have people like that in a community like this, and helping one another. I'm all for helping one another.
If everybody would do that instead of being accusatory, like a lot of people in the community is, I mean, they're so quick to holler hoax. No matter, they don't care sometimes if they don't care to know the circumstances surrounding the photo or the experience or whatever the case may be. You're always going to have, unfortunately, somebody out there trying to bring other people down.
And it's multiple somebodies, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. And if we would all just be like David Ellis and Ron Moorhead and, tons of other helpful people in this community and work together. And even like I said, I used not to believe in the woo, and I can't say that I'm still, I'm full throttle with it. I'm not.
Sure.
But the more you experience, the less you know. The more questions you have.
Yeah, sure.
And when you can't explain how something happened, then you've got to open your head to other possibilities. And you can't just nip things in the bud and say, no, that's bullshit,
Well, because you're not doing it justice if you did,
And if we work together, towards this common goal, we could probably make some really good strides, instead of wasting all of our time being negative, and trying to hurt people or step on somebody's back thinking they're going to get pushed up a little bit bigger, a little bit higher, But luckily, there are a whole lot of people that are helpful, good people. And we've been very fortunate to meet and get to know some of those people.
We never dreamed we would have had the experiences we've had and been the places we've been and saw and heard the things we've seen and heard. It's crazy. I mean, we thought maybe at best we'd go out in the woods and hear some howling far off away. But we've had them come right up into camp.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they've touched your tent. Most people would freak out if something touched their tent. You guys are just like, yeah, it's touching the tent.
They did more than touch it.
You know what I mean? It's just, smacking the tent. I mean, holy shit.
And the thing about in the wintertime, we've usually got a heater going, and my heater especially puts off a lot of light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like watching three little squirrels bounce
It's
around.
a puppet show.
The
shadow puppets.
We're trying to whisper, but it's seeing every move we make. So.
We've gotten to the point now to where the things we've experienced, it doesn't matter. We can tell. It doesn't matter if you're quiet or not. It doesn't matter if you're laying there being still. And so we think that it's like them watching a movie, We're their entertainment.
That one night in the Ozarks, we got real quiet and the stuff quit happening.
Yeah.
So we just busted out, started laughing and giggling, and we started hearing all the sounds again.
It started right back up. And we did that on purpose
Yes.
Sure.
because we were like, man, it's quiet.
Hilton,
Y'all,
go ahead.
I want to tell you real quick. This got me excited. Where we were at in the Ozarks, we had the first 2 nights it rained, didn't have anything happen. The third night we were there, we had gone up to the top of a hill up by it was like a logging area. We had gone around different areas, and did some calls, didn't really hear anything. And so before we went back to camp, we decided we'd go up to the top of this hill, did some calls, didn't hear nothing, drove back down the hill. And while we were driving, I rolled my window down and I did some calls out the window, hoping that maybe they would hear it and think it was a Bigfoot running. But when we got back to camp, we were sitting around the fire, Sandy and I were, and Barbara was over to our left, and we weren't there not even 10, 15 minutes, I don't think. And we started hearing what sounded like cow moves. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because I started laughing because it was like the Tribulation Bay where we heard the cows and the bear
and the motors and
all that.
Yeah.
I looked at Sandy and, we just looked at each other and we were like, holy crap. But we'd hear one over here and then we'd hear one over here and over there. I mean, it was coming from all angles. And so we knew that there was more than one. And they'd come up, whatever was making these cow moos and moans and stuff that we were hearing, they'd come up closer and then they'd be some far off. We heard like donkey sounds. We'd been hearing barking. And when that went on for like 3.5 hours. They got it really close after a while, what seemed a little too close for comfort. We decided finally that we'd go into the tent. And that was the night Barbara was talking about, that when we got quiet, they got quiet. And so we'd laugh and stuff. And we knew that the twinkling lights we had going was fixing to go out here pretty soon. And we thought they might come in, once the lights went out. But it finally died off. Sandy said about 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, she heard some really long howls and stuff. And even the next morning, early morning, I could hear the cow sounds again. But then the next night we had just a little bit more, but not much. But after we got back home, it was like a week later, I saw an article that came up on the internet, and it had been with the Fort Smith Telegram, whatever the local paper, I guess you could call it, was called. And they had a report listed. Now, there had been a sighting the day before we got there by a hunter looking for a place to hunt. But anyway, so it was a week and a half, maybe at the most, after we got back, that I read this article about a couple and their dogs that had been camping. And they had put a map up of the area they were camping in. And it was by a cemetery. And Barbara and Sandy had found an area before they picked out the camp we ended up in, had found an area by a cemetery that Barbara told me, I really wanted to camp down there, but there was a vehicle down there. And so we didn't want to camp around anybody. So we went, it wasn't a quarter mile, half mile away, I don't think. So where this couple had camped, they said that they had started hearing these noises in the woods, and the dogs were acting really skittish. And so they got scared and they went into their tent. And while they were in the tent, started throwing stuff at their tent. So they started getting scared even more so. And then they started hearing these noises and growls and stuff. Well, they got so scared, if I remember correctly, they let the dogs out of the tent, hoping it would scare away whatever was out there. And they started hearing their dogs yelping, and something had gotten their dogs. And then they said something heavy was being thrown at their tent, hitting their tent. And they left. And it turned out, from what the article said, that it was their dogs had been ripped apart. Now, I don't know how true this is, but this happened right about the time that we were there, or either that week after, and it was like quarter mile, half mile from where we had camped and had all that happen.
A literal
Thank
stone's
you.
throw away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were really
Wow.
close.
So the question came up, I don't remember who asked it, but how does things change when, like, you have the ladies all out there and you bring a man into the group?
Oh, it
when you
messes the whole thing up.
It's like nothing never happens when we're with the men.
Very
No.
rarely.
I
mean,
had
every
a feeling that was going to be the answer. Hilton Whittlewood. Is there any room for the Brothers of the Moon?
I
well,
won't even let my husband go.
Hilton's down in New Zealand, so
oh, well, that's cool.
That is
No.
But now
thanks
I've
for
gone
asking,
out,
Hilton.
with Larry and Mark and them, and we've had stuff happen. And you were talking about a tree crashing and stuff like that. It was me, Mark, and Larry, and we were in Tennessee. I don't remember if it was in Tennessee or Kentucky, right? Because it was right on the state line there. And Mark had gone out of his tent because I could hear the zipper. I had set our tent up right on a game trail, and we had all sorts of stuff coming up to the tent and sniffing. And I was like, okay, I'm never doing this again. But that night, Mark got up and he unzipped his tent, and I could hear that. And he had gone out evidently into the woods way over on the other side to use the bathroom. And all of a sudden, though, I hear this huge tree crash. And so I unzipped, my window, and I hollered out at him, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm good." Well, come to find out, while he was peeing, something had pushed a tree down, or a tree had fallen all on its own right there, not far from him. And so that was kind of interesting, I thought. But so we've had a little bit of stuff happen when there are guys around, but nothing like
Yeah.
when it's just us.
We're just more fun to pick with.
good.
They like to see if they can come up and make us squeal.
So Ben wants to know who has the best Bigfoot sighting.
Well,
Sandy and Debbie both have had a sighting, and I haven't personally laid my eyes on one. Now, I've seen a lot of evidence. I have things that happen around my house. I have for 15 years now, and
she's got some awesome stories.
but I cannot see one. I try and try and try. I don't use cameras. I don't believe in cameras in my yard because I don't think they'll keep coming up if I put one out. But they've been coming up for 15 years now.
And they leave her presents. Tell them
Yeah.
the animal presents you've gotten.
Oh, well, the first one I got was a deer leg. They threw a deer leg up on my roof for me. And on my roof. And I've had 3 headless rabbits brought to me
At 3 different times.
3 different times. And mostly what I do is we have this game we play with sticks. I don't know what the heck they're telling me. They're telling me something, and sometimes they got a whole story to tell. They just have sticks everywhere. I wish I could tell you what it means, but I don't know. But I do take and set out sticks, and they move them the way they want them.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, tell them about when you did the drawing of
Oh.
you.
I know this sounds like a woo story. It's crazy.
But it happened.
I promise you this happened. I had a piece of copy paper, and on one side of this copy paper, I drew a stick me, a stick lady with pigtails. I used to wear pigtails. And I had a stick kitty cat and a stick dog and a stick bunny rabbit. Well, on the back side of this picture, I drew a stick Bigfoot. Hair poking out everywhere, big feet, big hands. I took this piece of paper out in my pasture and I put it on the ground, and I took a long stick and drove the stick into the ground to hold the paper down. with the side up of me and my little animals. The next morning when I went outside, this paper was moved from the side of the bush I had put it on to the other side of the bush, and the Bigfoot side was up in the air with the stick back through it.
That's awesome.
See, that right there shows intelligence for one thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't tell people that story, like, 'cause when it happened to me, it's like, this is so unbelievable. This can't possibly be happening,
Why not?
because it just didn't register in my head.
we
That they
can't
could
wrap our brains around it.
Yeah, and I was like, how did it know to turn that paper over? It's crazy. It's
Okay.
exciting. I wish
It recognized,
But
itself, or
I used to walk my pasture a lot. I don't do it so much anymore, but I'd go out there every day and be seen.
sure.
And she would do karaoke and sing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I did karaoke shows just about every night.
At her house for them.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
And then she's heard something outside her windows cooing, and
one night my husband and I heard chatter outside my window. We didn't know what it was.
You got a fan club.
We always joked about Bigfoot being there, but we never dreamed that there was really a possibility one was out there. And we were going to bed, and we kept hearing this talking. Not what we could understand, but enough to know where it sounded like somebody talking. And my husband says, "Oh, I must have left TV on." So he gets up and he goes in the living room. He said, "TV's turned off." Well, we're still hearing this talking. We just kept hearing this talking outside our bedroom window. It was crazy. That was my one chance of gibberish. I didn't know what I was hearing. No recorder. I didn't know you recorded stuff like that.
I have a feeling you guys are going to have many more opportunities.
hope so.
Hope so.
Luis Mares wants to know, when you guys go out, do you guys use locator beacons or anything as far as, GPS for your own safety?
Well,
we let our significant others know where we're at. They can find us if they need to.
yeah,
But we don't advertise where we're going. We don't want people out there messing with us, knowing what we're out there doing.
Hilton down in New Zealand wants to know, so when you finish singing, do they clap?
Okay, hold on. Encore. That might be why they come up and hit our tent sometimes. Like,
They want us to get back out there and sing some more.
Sing some more.
Ben wants to know.
That was good.
What is Bigfoot? What are your opinions on that?
I don't know. He's intelligent, or it's intelligent.
I really think it's flesh and blood animal. That's my opinion.
Yeah. That's what I think. It's a flesh and blood creature. I don't think they're magical creatures.
No, I don't think they're magical either. From what I've heard, just in my opinion, I think they are a flesh and blood creature, but with maybe special attributes, or stuff that may seem a little over the top for us is just normal for them.
Well,
for a long time, cloaking didn't make any sense to me. But now I'm reading more and more about how their hair is reflective.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, I can see where it's turning just the right way. You wouldn't see them.
And too, we were all given these special abilities. All of us had the same special abilities, senses, things we could do, and through the years, for whatever reason, we've lost certain ones of them.
I agree.
We've got people that have a psychic type of ability. Mm-hmm. We have people just like the little girl, well, she's grown now, but when she was like 7 years old, she had a dream about Jesus, had never painted before in her life. And she is like a Picasso type. I mean, just a excellent painter.
Savant.
7 years old. Yeah. Picked up a paintbrush the next morning and painted one of the most famous pictures of Jesus ever. Had never painted before. We've all got these special abilities, but for whatever reason, we've lost them and we don't hone in on them. And it could be the foods we eat, the chemicals we breathe, the things we put into our bodies, whereas Bigfoot's out in the woods. They're all natural.
Well, you hear about the calcification of the pineal gland, preventing, supposedly the third eye is where those abilities would come from. So you hear those things because you mentioned the food and everything, and what we do put into our bodies affects it. It does calcify it, supposedly. This is what I hear. I don't,
So we don't know, they haven't done the horrible things to our bodies that we have done.
Sure.
They're living out in the woods in the natural elements and living off the land. And so I feel like they possibly still have some of these capabilities that we used to have or should have had. They talk about mind speak. I don't know if that happens or not. I've never experienced it, but who am I to say that's not one of the abilities that God gave them?
I believe it. I believe it is.
Yeah. And I do believe that God created every living creature in the universe. He created the heavens, plural, and the earth. And, there's other planets out there. And who am I to say there's not other life on some of those planets too? Because, just because he said he created the heavens, plural. And I just believe that Bigfoot is a creature that God created. And I believe he can have some special abilities that maybe we at one time had and some still do. And so that's just my thinking.
No, personally, I believe in the mind speak. I've had experiences with other human beings, where there's no other way to put it, but it was a psychic ability that kicked in with this certain person where it was like, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
So I think with a creature like that, who's in a situation where their goal is to survive and stay hidden, it would make sense to have an ability such as that to communicate quietly, besides the tree knocks or however else they communicate, But yeah, I definitely believe in that the mind speak.
And, we have to keep our heads open to, I think that's why it's important to share everything and not diminish what other people are saying. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff out there that sounds like it's just too far out of this. Yeah.
Sure.
But to every actual truth, that somebody has experienced, we can take pieces of that and learn from it. And that's the only way we're ever going to make any progress in this crazy community, that we're in, to try to find out more about these fascinating creatures. Sure. They are fascinating. But we can't dismiss everything we hear.
No, and you should, somebody, I told you, ladies, earlier, I first got introduced to Bigfoot through like Sasquatch Chronicles. And somebody had told Wes, he goes, you have to listen to every story. Everybody gets the same chance to say the same, whatever they have to say, everybody should get a chance, because you don't know. We don't know. It's all speculation. So you have to listen to everything, give everybody the same chance. I forget who told them that. And it's true, you don't know where that missing piece of information that is just going to click is going to come from, you know?
Really, because something just odd and out of ordinary might happen with this person's sighting that they would never associate with Bigfoot. But you hear somebody else talking about it and you go, you know, that same thing happened to me.
Yep.
Mhm.
So it makes you feel better about the things that happen to you.
And it could be something too that you had happen and you think it's something kind of that couldn't have happened, you know, and you dismiss it in your own head. And then when you hear somebody else say it, and then you're like, oh, wow, that really was probably something Bigfoot related. Or even connecting the dots, you know, there's so much we don't know. When you hear somebody else talking about something, and then you're like, well, I had something very similar happen, you're able to piece things together and it begins to make more sense. We can all learn from each other as long as we're open-minded and willing to learn.
Absolutely.
And there's just too many that aren't.
It's not a subject, or I don't want to call it genre or whatever, that you can't be closed-minded in this. You'll go nowhere. You know. Yeah, it's important that people do go in with an open mind. What's your ultimate goal? I mean, besides learning for yourselves, I mean, do you want to bring awareness or you know, make other people aware that these things exist, or would you rather just not? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I've heard stories where people just, they've had these experiences, but they don't want to tell about them just because, for the protection of the creature itself or the creatures. You know, like most people won't tell where their locations are, you know, because to protect the creatures.
Yeah.
I'm babbling. I'm I had a brain fart again, so it's like, where was I going with this?
Well, I don't want to. It's not, I don't think we really have like a goal to prove something to anybody other than ourselves.
Well, not yeah, but just
Yeah,
creating awareness about these
right.
things, not necessarily proving to anybody.
I think that, I mean, I've believed that there was something out there as long as I can remember. And everybody, I'm an open book. You know, I've talked about it. I've never tried to hide that I believe in Bigfoot. Even before I saw one, you know, I believed in it. There was something out there that I knew existed that was doing these weird things. But everybody that knows me knows I do. I put it on my Facebook page, you know. And what's so cool about this is the more open you are with about talking about it and about your beliefs and what you've experienced, other people that have, there's so many people that don't want to put out their belief in it because they'll have people make fun of them,
Sure.
you know, or they're scared what people are going to think. They're scared in their professionalism, you know, the business or whatever, that they're going to get picked on or thought of less. But I've had people that I've gone to school with that have messaged me in the past and lived just down the road from me in a little small community and told me about stuff that had happened to them that they said that they hadn't told anybody before for, you know, different reasons. And so, you know, to not be able to talk about something so spectacular, that's got to be hard.
Yeah,
know?
and it validates, you know, for them, you know, what
Yeah.
they saw, and they're not crazy, and they have someone who they can talk to about it. That's awesome, you know. That's what I try to supply. This platform that I provide. You know, anybody can come on and talk about anything. It's not a Bigfoot channel. It's not a ghost channel. It's not. It's whatever they want to talk about, you know. And it's good to have people be able to have some place they can come and not be ridiculed and not be, you know, everybody here is just so relaxed in this. My chat is amazing.
Yeah.
So people feel so comfortable coming here, and you know, they know they can.
And that's good. We need some place like that where you don't have people, you know, bickering back and forth at each other all the time, trying to cut you down thinking they know more about it than you do or whatever. Nobody knows more about it. There's no genius
Experts.
specialist expert
Nope.
in this field. There's people that have had more experiences,
Sure.
but there's not one single person out there that can tell us what this is. You know, if it's an alien, if it's flesh and blood, if whatever, you know. But I think the more we get out there and the more we share, you know, yeah, I want people to know these things do exist, but I don't really care if they don't believe it or not.
Sure.
And I want
No,
to see more.
Squatch and Cowboy has a question, and I guess it's going to go with all three of you. Miracle Whip or mayonnaise?
Oh,
Mayonnaise.
I like both, Joe.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise,
Dukes.
thank you.
Dukes.
Duke's
Yeah.
mayonnaise, I've had Duke's. Duke's is pretty good.
Yeah, dude.
People know I cannot stand Miracle Whip. That's why it popped out.
No.
So, guys, if anybody has any more questions, please, now's the time because we're a little over 2 hours and we're going to wrap this up here soon. So,
I know
So even-
Sandy's fighting to stay awake.
Yeah.
yeah, no.
I'm not gonna
Ladies, I am so
Yeah.
thrilled that you joined me tonight. So, about another 5 minutes. Let's see if anybody else has any questions. Real Dill says Squatchin' Miracle Whip hands down. Yeah. Gag. You just lost points, Real.
Now, the thing about squatching is it's exciting. It gets your adrenaline up. And if you have the
doubt.
opportunity to get out there and do it, just so you can experience that feeling. You'll get hooked on it.
Quick couple questions. Scotty B wants to know, any orbs? You see any orbs when you're out there?
I've seen lights. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
called orbs.
I started to say Sandy saw lights going through a field one night.
Yeah. That was in the big thicket in Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
Area.
Yeah.
And I've seen orbs and something in a LBL, Land Between the Lakes. That was
Right on.
kind of weird.
Crow wants to know, how do you ladies stay so lovely?
Oh, thank you. That's sweet. You just earned brownie points.
Yeah.
It's all that Miracle Whip we put on.
You never leave home without it.
That's right.
All right. Ray says, thanks, girls. What is
you're
this?
welcome.
I see another question. The ones I got. Okay. Robert says, do you believe the ones when you got all the vocals were juveniles that were scolded by an adult? So the gibberish you felt was the adult and they were scolding?
The whole gibberish. Of course, we have no way of knowing.
Sure.
But that's exactly the impression I got. That the two, because it was just two short little blah, 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 blah back at him. And then that third one sounded more authoritative. And I mean, and you know how you envision stuff in your head when you're hearing it? And I just envisioned it standing there shaking his finger, getting on to them. But yeah, and I do believe that the ones that come into camp, of course, this is just an opinion, I believe that it's probably more juveniles that come into camp. They're a little more, and maybe the older ones are sending them into camp, I know I tell my kids, I don't want to get up and go do something. So you get up and go do it for me. And so.
Okay. Patrick Vaughn, this is going to be the last question. Patrick Vaughn says, do y'all walk out to where y'all hear them walking around? What signs do you come across? When you hear them, do you go out to where they are the next day and what do you see? I guess is
Yeah.
Yeah, we go out and try to see if we can find any evidence around where we heard sounds coming from.
Yeah. And
Might get lucky, footprints.
And when we were up in Georgia and talking about, the rock that was thrown at us in camp and some of the sounds we were hearing and then the direction that all the dirt and rocks were thrown on top of our tents, I had ran black thread in that area. There had been a trail. You could see that there was a trail. And so I ran black thread from tree to tree thinking, okay, if they come up this way, if this is where they're coming from, maybe, and I put it up higher. So if a deer comes through there or something, it's not going to break the thread.
to see how tall. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And sure enough, after we had that happen, the thread had been broken. And so, but yeah, we do. We go look around and see what we can find. And we found some cool stuff.
That's amazing. And keep up the great work and don't bring the guys along. Because it seems whatever you're doing is working, and that's what we need, for you guys to record some of the best vocals that people have heard is a real amazing thing. So I think you guys keep doing what you're doing.
Thank
you. We're going to give it our best shot.
What's that?
We're going to give it our best shot. We're going to keep going.
No, and that's awesome. And I hope to run into you guys one day.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out there. I'm definitely going to get out there.
It'd be fun.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. It was an amazing show. It was my honor to have you guys on.
Thank you for inviting
me being this, closet squatcher, or whatever, I'm just so fascinated with this that it's really, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us. We enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You can tell we like to talk, or at least especially I do.
You're so good at it. So yeah, I'm going to put you guys backstage, and I'll be right back there, and we'll say goodnight. But if you guys want to say goodnight to chat, now's the time.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Sweet dreams.
All righty.
Thanks again.
Watching.
And I'm just going to drop you all backstage. Thanks again. Well, guys, I think that was an amazing show. Sisters of the Moon, thank you so much. Amazing stories. I have goosebumps right now because I don't know. For you guys to get out there and do that is just amazing. So major props. Everybody in chat, thank you guys so much for showing up. My moderators, great job. You guys, you keep chat the way it is, and it's a great place to be, and thank you so much. If you guys enjoyed the show tonight, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, share, and leave comments. Wow, last night's video was awesome. You guys left some amazing comments, over 130 comments right now. We're sitting in on that video, and thank you for all the well wishing. You guys were 100,000 subs. You guys really put it out there, and thank you so much for that. On that note, I'm gonna bounce off of here, and I will see you guys Thursday. If I'm forgetting anything, I apologize. Probably forgetting something, but Super Sleuth, thank you. Everybody, thank you. See you guys Thursday. Peace and God bless. Thanks again.